Management Committee meeting for August 11th to order 2021. The Metropolitan Council Chair has determined it is not practical or prudent to conduct in-person meetings in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Accordingly, committee members participate in the meeting by telephone or other electronic means, and the meeting will be conducted under Minnesota Statutes Section 13D.021 at the date and time we have stated. We encourage you to monitor the meeting remotely. If you have any other comments, we encourage members of the public to email us at public.info@met.state.mn.us and respond to your comments in a timely manner. With that, actually, one question for the regional administrator. Are we going to be allowing public comment? I know we're doing it at the full council. Are we going to be allowing that at other committee meetings as we move forward with
So, Mr. Chair, in committees where we have had public comment in the past, we're going to be allowing it. If we haven't made time on each agenda for public comment, then we don't need to start doing so, but
Gotcha.
we should still encourage them to hit our website or the email
Send us an
address.
email.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So with that, can we call the roll to see if we have quorum, please?
Barber.
Here.
Gonzalez. Johnson.
Here.
Lilligren.
Here.
Ferguson.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have quorum. We have the agenda for you. Is there any changes to the agenda that people need? All right, seeing none, can we get a motion to approve the minutes of the July 28th meeting?
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval.
Your second?
Second by Barber.
Moved by Johnson, second by Barbara. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, can we call the roll, please?
Barber.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then our, sorry, I'm trying to multitask here. All right, we have two business items that we have on the agenda. The first business item is 2021-186, Cobra Direct Billing and Flexible Spending Account Administrative Services Contract. Terry? Terry, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, good. I apologize. I was late to the unmute, I guess. I'm Terry Bolt, Benefits Manager, here to present business item 2021-186 regarding our COBRA retiree billing and flexible spending account administrative services. We currently have a contract with one-to-one benefits, now known as Benefit Resources, for the COBRA and retiree billing. And we currently have a contract with Health Partners for the flexible administration services. Both of those contracts are expiring at the end of this calendar year after a 5-year term. We did work with our benefits consulting company, Aon, as technical advisors on this project, and they recommended that we issue one RFP for both of these services, and in that RFP, make it clear to vendors that they had the capability to propose on one of the services or both of the services. We received 9 proposals. 2 of the proposals only submitted a proposal for the flexible spending account services. The other 7 submitted proposals covering both the COBRA retiree billing and flex spending services. The evaluation panel met 3 times, and at the end of the 3rd meeting, we determined we wanted to bring in the top 3 for brief interviews. At the end of those interviews, the panel determined that we had 2 top finalists, and we did issue a best and final offer to those 2 finalists. That resulted in the Total Administrative Service Corporation representing the most advantageous to the council, and the panel came to consensus on that agreement. The Office of Equal Opportunity thoroughly reviewed this procurement for opportunities to include MCUB firms. OEO identified 2 scopes of work in this contract that would be applicable for subcontracting that included insurance billing, payment and collection, and customer service. No MCUBs were identified that provide customer service in this capacity, and 1 MCUB firm was identified that specializes in benefits administration to perform the billing and payment collection. This firm was directly solicited but did not submit a proposal. Due to the limited availability of MCUB firms, OEO did not set a goal, as in doing so would be considered a set aside. OEO made further efforts to promote small business participation by recommending small business inclusion language, which requires proposers to submit a small business inclusion plan. Total Administrative Services Corporation has submitted a plan that identifies area of work where they will incorporate MCUB firms. OEO has reviewed the details of this plan and determined the plan meets the contract requirements. Authorization to enter into this contract with for COBRA direct billing and flex spending account administrative services supports the Thrive outcome of stewardship by providing the administrative services at the lowest cost available over the next 5 years. Funding for both COBRA retiree billing and flex spending account administration is considered in the human resources budget. There is no known support or opposition to this item. The proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute a contract with Total Administrative Service Corporation to provide COBRA retiree billing and flexible spending account administration services for all eligible council employees and retirees in an amount not to exceed $800,000. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for the presenter? All right. Seeing none, could we get a motion to? I guess I just wanted to make one comment. I do think it's good that we've found a way to it seem to me, compared to what we've done in the past, creatively include some small businesses in this work. And I think the more often we do that, I think that the better. It's just sort of an example of trying to find different tools to be inclusive, and and Sai and Ashanti are on the call, and Jody, and I know they're thinking creatively around how to do that, and every circumstance is a little bit different, but it is those are the kinds of things we're trying to do, and hopefully some small businesses can work on this and they can grow their business, and then they'll be in a better position next time these contracts come around, or they can build deeper relationships with the prime to have opportunities on future contracts outside the work that they do with the council. So we should just, I think it's important to note that we found a way to do that in this contract. So with that, can I get a motion to approve business item 2021-186?
Lilligren moves approval.
Moved by Lilligren. Is there a second?
Second by Barber.
Moved by Lilligren, seconded by Barber. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, can we call the roll, please?
Barber,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion carries. Our second business item that we have is the same week item that we heard, I believe, at Transportation earlier this week, if I'm not mistaken. That is business item 2021-187, JT, same week, Southwest LRT budget amendment. Stuart?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Stuart McMullen, Director of Budget and Operations, and I am bringing forward the 2021 Southwest Light Rail Budget Amendment. With me and available to answer questions are Ed Petrie, Finance Director for Metro Transit, and Jim Alexander, Southwest Light Rail Project Director. This amendment makes a single change to the Metro Transit capital budget and was reviewed and approved at the Transportation Committee on Monday, August 9th, as the chair stated. At their board meeting last Tuesday on August 3rd, Hennepin County authorized an additional commitment of $200,315,255 to the Southwest project, consistent with FTA requirements for this project in advance of the full funding agreement. This amendment will also incorporate into the budget business item 2021-192, a capital amendment to the grant agreement with Hennepin County and HICRA that goes before the council tonight. Metro Transit will be adding these funds to their authorized capital program, or ACP. The amendment also increases the 2021 capital improvement budget by $100 million and is described specifically in Table 9. If the committee approves this amendment will be voted on by the full council at this evening's council meeting. The council will also vote on the separate second quarter budget amendment that the management committee approved at its last meeting on July 28th. The motion is that the Metropolitan Council authorizes the 2021 unified budget as amended and in accordance with the attached table. That summary, we could answer any questions the committee might have.
Are there any questions by the committee? All right. We did have a robust conversation, or somewhat robust at Transportation. So I think it's just important for us to note that, obviously this is a large sum of money. It's always interesting that, there's not a lot of conversation about with something that is this big in size. And as Jim has pointed out, Alexander's pointed out, that there are more changes coming to the project. So we will have to do some work to continue to find additional funding to be able to meet all of the requirements of the project, whether that's additional federal funding or additional local partner funding, depending on what else is required for this project. So I do think it's important for everybody to, to note that it's not that we have $200 million left in contingency that's unspoken for at this point. We are using our contingency funds, and we're not completely out of the woods, so to speak, and change orders and other things will have to happen on the project. So I think it's important for all of us to note that we committed to the project, so we're probably going to keep moving forward, but we'll have to do some work to find the funding. Any other comments, changes? Councilor
Mr.
Lilligan.
Chair, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, staff, for bringing this forward, and thanks for your comments. I think they're spot on. I don't serve on the Transportation Committee, but I do want to really lift up and thank Sam O'Connell's communications to council members around this. And I felt that the way she laid out sort of the way we can understand this and communicate about it with the communities we represent was really, really helpful. So I don't see her here today, but I did just want to lift that up and say thanks to Sam O'Connell for that.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, can we get a motion to approve business item 2021-187, JTSW? Yes.
Moved by Barber.
Moved by Barber.
Lilligren seconds.
Moved by Barber, seconded by Lilligren. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, can we call the roll, please?
Barber.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye,
Thank
and the
you.
motion carries. That's all of the business items that we have. We do have a couple of informational items. So the first informational item is the quarterly investment review committee report. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. This is Mark Thompson. I'm the Senior Manager of Treasury, and I'm here to present a quarterly summary update of our investment portfolios, and Greg is going to share a presentation. I will say that on the website is a more in-depth, lengthy presentation, and if you review that later and have additional questions, please reach out to me. My contact information is on the website. So Greg, you can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. First, I thought I'd give everyone an update on the CD program. It increased during the quarter. We added new investments with 2 different banks. You can see those investments highlighted here in red. We did a CD with 21st Century Bank for $2 million and one for Drake Bank for $2 million. So that brings the program up to $18 million with 7 different banks. It was $14 million last quarter. We're trying to fill the program as it's been approved for $20 to $25 million in total. So we're working to get to that range. So we have room to add a few more banks. So we'll be introducing the program to additional banks the next couple of quarters. And so Greg, you can go to the next slide, please. And I thought this CD program is now a little over a year old, a year and a quarter, something like that. So I thought it would be a good time to start thinking about how we're going to, what our outcomes are and what the goal of the program was, and try to assess if we're hitting those goals. So I thought I'd quickly review the goal of the program, as it says on this slide, was to invest with local community banks and credit unions that have a successful track record of supporting local minority and female-owned small businesses, affordable housing initiatives, programs for the unbanked, and community development. So that's the goal, and we want to make sure we're supporting the right banks, banks that share those goals, and ensure our funds are getting put to work in the community. So, in addition, part of our annual assessment of the banks we invest with, we're asking for financials, and we're also asking for their Community Reinvestment Act reports. But I also reached out to the banks that we have and asked them to send me some narrative about what they're doing to support the goals of the program. So this slide lists some of those responses I received. I received many more, but I just wanted to kind of highlight a few and show some examples of what our different banks are doing. One bank is working closely with down payment assistance programs for the Urban Indian Housing Program, offering below market rates for Native Americans. The second bullet, we have one bank who's done over 1,000 PPP loans totaling 116 million in the metro, and another bank that's done over 3,000 PPP loans, so it's for 250 million. Another bank has a 7-year partnership with Meta, which is a nonprofit whose mission is to support minority entrepreneurs. So they're helping finance minority small businesses. Another bank has initiated a program to ease account opening restrictions to improve access to the unbanked, and they've engaged nonprofits. They've engaged their banking associations. They've brought things to the legislature, trying to help ease restrictions for account opening for the unbanked. And another bank has 97% of their deposits and loans to small businesses, and 27% of their loans are to BIPOC small businesses. And another example is the financing. One bank's financing a woman-owned small business, which is building and providing a portable, accessory, movable dwelling units for homeless veterans. So I just thought I would share these examples of things. I have more, and and to let you know that the banks we're doing business with seem to be doing good things with our funds. And I'll also add to that we're trying to take this a step further. We're creating, number one, a log of outcomes that we'll share in the future, that will keep track and of the outcomes that we're seeing, so that we can know what the banks are doing. We're also trying to build and refine our annual assessment process. This is our first time through, so we're trying to think about other ways to find the right banks and assess how our banks are doing. And one possibility, Councilmember Ferguson and I discussed this yesterday or a couple days ago, but how do we know that our funds are being put to use directly? Is some of these programs, would they be done anyway, even if we didn't do a CD with this bank? So that's something we're thinking about. How can we make sure that our funds are making a difference? Maybe we can find smaller banks that need more capital, and they can demonstrate that, and we can help those banks make our goals happen directly if it can follow our money closer. But for now, these are some of the examples, and I think it's good progress, and I think the program's growing nicely. So that concludes my thoughts on the CD program. I just wanted to provide that information. I'll pause if anybody has any questions or thoughts on the CD program.
Any questions? Councilor Lilligren.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Mark, for the report and for your work on this. And I just have a question about in your first city program outcomes bullet about the Urban Indian Housing Program. Is that ours? Is that the Met Council's housing program? I just haven't heard the term before. And I like the term. I just haven't heard it before.
I don't know the details behind that. That came from Bremer Bank, and I'm not sure.
Okay. So it's a Bremer.
I'm not sure of the details behind the program, where it's from, but I can do some more research on it if you'd like.
If that's convenient. Otherwise, you've given me a place to at least start the conversation. I'm just really encouraged to hear a program called the Urban Indian Housing Program. So if that's a tool that Bremer uses, I can kind of look around and see what I can find out as well. Thanks, Mark.
Mr. Chair.
Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mark, for this. I really appreciate it. Before I ask my question, I want to thank Chair Ferguson for stepping in for me, as I was not able to lead the investment review committee. So thank you for that, Chris. Second of all, this is really, I really appreciate this slide here, and hopefully, all of this, it's all available to the entire council, but even to have a little bit more depth about which each of these programs are, and, just, even a half page per program or one pager per program. I mean, this is good stuff. And at a high level, it looks like we're meeting our goals, but to get into a little bit more of the details, even to Councilmember Lilligren's question, what program is that? I think that would, even just if we make it available to this committee and council, that'd be great. But I mean, not pressing for it. I know everybody's busy, but this is good stuff. So I'd like to even just make sure we're putting it out there for people to know what's going on in the public too. And then, Mark, after being involved in this for over a year now, are there any cautionary tales or things that we've discovered that we should be doing better at, or bumps in the road that we've hit, or things that our partners are saying, hey, this isn't working great for us, that we could be doing differently?
Well, that's a good question, council member. I haven't run into any big roadblocks yet. I think when this program was first started, I wasn't here, but my understanding is we sent out many notices that we were starting this program, and we didn't get a lot of responses. So I think maybe it was a struggle at first to get banks to sign up. I think the banks we're working with seem very excited to do it. I think the improvement is a possible improvement is like I was mentioning, that how can we make sure that our funds are making a difference, and getting more of a direct correlation between what did our money do exactly? How does it help banks? Because some banks like a Bremer, they're large and they want our money and they want to participate in this program, but the larger the bank, the harder it is to track that our funds directly. And maybe there's other banks that we can. I'm not saying we shouldn't do business with Bremer, but I'm just saying we should look for ways where we can make sure that we're having a measure our response or our outcome more directly. But all these banks, we appreciate the business of doing business with us, and we appreciate their efforts, and they're doing good things. And I think we needed to just define the outline and define the process a little more. Make sure we write out procedures, because a lot of this is our first time through, so we're learning as we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just do a follow-up.
Sure.
So thanks, Mark. I do appreciate that. And because everything that we do, we want to attach to our, big goals that the Met Council has set that we're working on. So of course, this is like right on target for all of that. So I'm wondering, and again, we don't want to make it too burdensome for the participants, because we don't want to,
right,
make it less attractive to participate in the program. But I do think having a report back and then maybe offering up one or two specific examples, and I know there's data privacy, we have to be careful, but it would be good to know, overall, this is the economic impact that's being had within the communities that we're focused on. And as an example, here are one or two cases for each of these banks where, and again, you've got them here, but, just I think more robustly telling that story and sharing it out. I think it's just really important, especially as we're still in the infancy, especially, given just over a year into this. So it looks like we're on the right path, but, measuring things and tracking stats and knowing that impact, I think, is just really important to make sure, we're meeting our goals. And I have no doubt that this is exactly the direction we need to go in, but it's always good to have some data behind it. If people ask, well, what's the point? It all sounds good, but how did we help people? Whose lives were impacted positively? And can we start to track, not for year 1, year 2, but, if we get 5, 10, 15-year trends on some of this stuff, future councils will be able to look back and go, hey, when they started this, look at the data that we've got and look at how that impact is expanded throughout the region, something like that, just laying the foundation for that now.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, or Councilmember Johnson, if I can respond, I absolutely agree. I think tracking results through a third party isn't always easy, and I think that's where we need to make some improvements, and we can't make it too burdensome on the banks. Some of these banks are more forthcoming than others, when I ask for this kind of information, but I think tracking it as in depth as we can and getting more information on these programs is something I'm going to work on. So,
and I think the smaller the bank, the greater the impact having more funds deposited with them will be, right? So, obviously, if Wells Fargo gets another 10 million, it doesn't make any difference to what they do on a day in and day out basis. But some of these small banks that only have, 100 million in capital, if they get an extra, $3, $4, $5 million deposited with them, it really allows them to put more money to work in the community. And you look at some of these smaller banks. All of the banks we have are, generally speaking, smaller banks. I mean, Bremer is the biggest, but it really still is a very small bank relative to the big national players. But you look at 97% of the deposits coming in loans to small businesses. A lot of these banks have one branch or 2 or 3 branches, and they're all here right in town. So I think finding a way to the direct correlation is always difficult because money is somewhat fungible, right? They don't take our deposit money and just funnel that to or direct that to a particular business. But I think getting a better understanding of that is good. And I think one of the things that Mark and I talked about was just asking the question, right? Like if we doubled the amount we had on deposit with you, right? What more would you be able to do, right? And so that might be a better way to sort of, get an, ascertain. So if somebody says it wouldn't really make much difference, then fine. If somebody says, well, we're at our lending capacity right now, and 25% of our loans are to BIPOC businesses, and we'd love to do more, but we can't because we're at our capacity. So if we got another 2 million from you, that would allow us to lend 10 or 20 million out to BIPOC businesses. Then that would be great information for us to have, right? So I think that's some good questions that we can ask and look at that. And one of the successes too is that the return we get on these CDs is better than the return we're currently getting in the market. We are taking a little bit more risk for that, but my sense is the risk is manageable if we, in a couple of different programs, either it's collateralized or it's they're using I think it's called CDARS, which is a program where they sell it to other institutions, but the money stays with their bank. But basically, it's a way for them to have the money on deposit, but then it's we get an FDIC guaranteed because each institution is really only at $250,000. So there are some ways to manage that risk, but we are, we're not giving up return for this opportunity, which is a good thing. And so I think we should be looking at whether or not, how's it doing, and would at least using all the money we originally authorized make sense, because we're still short on that end. So, but great, Mark. Let's go to maybe the next slide.
Sure, Greg, if you could go to, perfect. So I thought I'd review quickly each of our 3 investment portfolios. We have the short-term portfolio, which is our, kind of our cash management tool. They ended the quarter a little over $1 billion, so it's quite large. It's well, I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a moment. We have our long-term, that's our long-term reserves, and our OPEB trust. So this chart just showing you the balances over the last 3 years for the second quarter. Go ahead, Greg, you can go to the next one. Total return, this is the short-term portfolio total return. This portfolio is invested in treasury bills, money market funds, government agency discount notes. Nothing's really changed in our strategy or the portfolio over the last quarter. We're really laddering this portfolio out over the short term. It's really invested from overnight out to 9 months, around the council's cash flow and larger expenditures. So it outperformed its benchmark during the quarter, but as you can see, the returns are, pennies, 0.009% versus its index of 0.001%. So it's a struggle for yield in this very short part of the yield curve. The average yield in the portfolio is 0.04. So you can see that rates are really, really low. It's beat its index now, handily for many years. So we're managing it well, I think. And you can see how yield, looking at the total return, you can see how the yields fell. That started the pandemic when the Fed put interest rates to 0. And it's gone to virtually 0, and it's been there over the past year or so. And the kind of the projections right now is the Federal Reserve is going to keep interest rates low at least another year, maybe even into 2023. So it's a struggle. We do the best we can to find little increments of yield, but as you can tell from these percentage rates, it's very small increments when we find something of value. But so I think we just continue to watch the yield curve, watch what the Fed's doing, and see if we can find some opportunities to bump up the yield as much as we can. So Greg, you can go to the next one. I'll quickly touch on the long-term portfolio. This is our longer-term reserves. It's $477 million at the end of the quarter. It's invested in treasuries, U.S. government agencies, taxable municipal bonds, and of course our CD program is in this portfolio also. And it hasn't changed a lot over the past few quarters. We have been adding some more municipal bonds, trying to buy local when we can, because that's a yield pickup opportunity. And the CDs have increased a little bit as we've expanded that program. And U.S. Treasuries have provided some value, so we've increased those also. Mostly buying out in that 3 to 7, 8 year kind of time frame for maturities. You know, that this portfolio underperformed its benchmark during the second quarter. It was 0.343 versus the index of 0.997. So you can see even slightly longer maturities are still struggling for yield. The yield curve is very, very low and very flat right now, so it's tough. But you know, we outperformed in the first quarter in this portfolio, and we underperformed in the second quarter. The past 12 months we're ahead. So we've seen some wild swings in interest rates the last 2 quarters. So we still have a kind of a defensive stance against rising interest rates in the portfolio. So we tend to swing, but not quite as much as the index. But so I don't know if you have any questions on that one. I'll move on to the last one, Greg. I guess the last portfolio is the OPEB Trust. And this one continues to be managed by the State Board of Investment. We give them allocation instructions, but they're managing the pools that it's invested in. It's slightly underperformed. Its benchmark for the second quarter, you can see it's had a return of 561 versus the index at 586. This has been a great tool for us in our OPEB funding, and you can see it's averaged 13.91 for the last 5 years. So it's been a great tool, like I said. And our current allocation, this is as of the end of the second quarter, was 64% in the S&P 500 equity pool managed by the state board, and 32% in fixed income securities, 4% in a cash bucket. Our target on this is 60% equities and 40% fixed in cash. The equity bucket tends to sometimes edge a little higher because of the stock market doing so well. So we occasionally adjust it back down to keep it near the 60%. Roughly the same allocation as last quarter, so just a little bit more in the equities. The value of the trust you can see listed there. It's over the past year, it's gone from 288 million-ish to almost 350. So it's been a great investment. It's been doing fabulous. So and I'll stop there. Just kind of a quick overview of what we have, and I'll pause for any questions. That's all I have to comment on.
Mark, does anybody know, if you just bring up that last slide, Greg, but does anybody know what our liabilities are compared to that 350 million asset?
Well, I know that we do an actuarial report or study, evaluation, I guess they call it, every 2 years, Mr. Chair, to estimate our liabilities.
Do we know what it was last time though? Like, are we overfunded, underfunded?
We're a little overfunded, yes. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but 200 and some million.
Okay.
So
Yes,
it's
Mr.
doing
Chair,
well.
as you recall, we have been pulling a little bit back from environmental services, who was a little bit more overfunded into the operating budget, and that's how we've been smoothing out kind of their debt service bubble. We consider kind of fully funded a little bit over 100% because we want to stay at that level and be able to flow with the markets. And each time we do an evaluation, we kind of reconsider where we're sitting on that. And if Marie is online, she can probably tell us when the next actuarial evaluation is.
I think it's soon. So we were just talking about an investment committee. So
Great.
I think it's this year. So
Yeah,
and
Mr. Chair, it's supposed to come in the next few weeks. So
yeah, and the one comment we made at the investment committee, so everybody knows, is not that long ago we were at a 90-10 equity to fixed income ratio, and so now we're at 60-40. And the comment that we made in a discussion we had was just that we should, every time we get the actuarial report, we should make a conscious decision either to leave it at 60-40 or to make a change. For overfunded, then taking less risk probably might have some validity to it, so that we remain overfunded and aren't at risk of becoming underfunded if the market goes in the tank or something like that. So, so anyway, so when that report comes out, then the investment committee will take a look at that and we'll bring a recommendation one way or the other to the management committee with that. So great. I think up next we have any other questions on the Treasury and Investment Report?
Mr. Chair, this is Marie
Yes.
Henderson, Deputy CFO. If you're interested, the new actuarial report will be out later in 2021 on the odd years. And just in perspective, I'm looking at the 2020 ending balances in assets around the 383 million for the year, and liabilities were 375 million. So we're running about 10 million more in assets. So just to give you a little bit of perspective there in the funding. And we also have, not saying that we're overfunded, but we have that room that in case interest rates change and investments change, that we still remain fully funded for this plan.
But if we have a swoon like we had last March and the market goes down 25%, we're no longer overfunded, right? Based on our current allocation. So
correct. We were watching that very closely, and the market rebounded very nicely, but absolutely, we watch this on a monthly basis. Thank you.
perfect. All right, thank you. All right, any other comments? All right, seeing none, our second information item that we have is a quarterly procurement report. We have Jody, Elaine, and Elaine. Sai's on as well, and I think Ashanti's on, so we may have some other commentary coming in.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Jody Jacoby, and I'm the director of the procurement department. And I'm here today with my partners in the Office of Equal Opportunity to help present this information. Certainly, it's a collaboration and teamwork. And with me in the Office of Equal Opportunity is Sai Jordan, the director, Ashanti Payne, the assistant director, and Elaine Ogilvie, the manager of the Small Businesses Unit. And we're here again to present the information item on the procurement summary for second quarter of 2021. Council's expenditure for goods and services authorized the regional administrator to approve awards not exceeding $500,000 for the purchase of goods and services, and construction awards not exceeding $2.5 million. So this report includes a breakdown that's grouped by value and procurement type. It also includes MCUB utilization summary, which I believe Elaine will be reviewing. And then something that's new was a request to add all contracts expiring or non-construction contracts for the time frame of September 1 through April 1st. And after the procurement summary, Elaine from the Office of Equal Opportunity will speak to MCUB utilization. But first, I'll just walk through the report. The second page lists the high-level procurement summary detail. And as you can see, the cumulative spend was almost $655 million. And within that value, there were almost 9,000 separate procurement events that took place as a P card or a purchasing card purchase, a purchase order, a request for quote, an RFP, an invitation for a bid, or a construction contract, many different methods. And looking back from this year to last year, we had for second quarter alone almost 220 million more dollars, but fewer transactions. Last year we had just over 12,000 transactions. So about 3,400 fewer purchases, and that we believe was attributed to the many frequent purchases for the pandemic supplies. On the bottom of page 2 also lists the trends, and these are very consistent quarter by quarter and also consistent with other public procurement agencies, where 96% of the procurements were of a transaction value of less than $10,000, which is our micro purchase value where there's no competition needed. And then 95% of the procurements of a contract value that was greater than 175,000, which is the threshold where we formally advertise our projects on the council's doing with business page. So I'd like to talk a little bit about some success stories of things that aren't included in this report for the procurement section, and then a couple specific projects. But first, looking at a year back, we just implemented the increase with MCUB Select, where you have a great opportunity, the project managers and the vendor, to submit a quote and go right to a purchase order. That was increased last year from 10,000 up to 25,000. And again, we're hearing just really fantastic success from the business units and also from our suppliers. Last year at this same time, under 25,000, we had about 6% of those purchase orders were to MCUB vendors. And this year, in comparison, in first quarter, it was 8%. And then in second quarter, it was 13%. So some pretty good increases. We are making some improvements, something to just be aware of. And then our MCUB sheltered market program, there were 3 done in second quarter, and they're already working on 2 additional procurements where they're sheltering it off and only having MCUB vendors because there's 3 of them directly responding to the bid or the proposal. There were 2 specific purchase orders that the purchase order team worked on that issued some IT procurements too that were based on state of Minnesota contracts. And the purchasing agent team and the IS team really worked close to ensure they were looking at a pool of vendors that the state of Minnesota already had contracts with that were classified as MCUB vendors. And so they were able to quickly utilize them as MCUB suppliers. And they were new contractors that the council is working with. And then just 2 contracts. One is on page 5. Contract is 21P059, where the goal that was set by the Office of Equal Opportunity was 8%, and the actual DBE or the MCUB commitment was 100%. This was a construction contract where 3 bids were received, and the awarded vendor is an MCUB company who was providing subcontractor work on similar projects. And this was the first time they were awarded as a prime with a major construction contract. And we believe that they were successful because of the close working relationship of staff at the council, which again includes the project manager, absolutely procurement, and the Office of Equal Opportunity. The second story I would like to talk about is just down, again, on page 5, and it's right underneath that first contract I was talking about, where again, the goal was set at 14%, and there was 100% commitment. And this was a different contract type where it was a non-construction services contract. And again, 3 bids were received, but the awarded bidder who provided the best price was an MCUB company. And we're very excited to have that work move forward with that company. Also, some notable work is we are working with our online bid portal company that advertises or hosts some of our bidding document called Quest CDN. And we recently completed a pilot for construction contracts to utilize the full online bid functionality. And that was successful, so we're putting that into production. And we believe that this will reduce some errors and decrease some of the number of non-responsive bids that we've received because it'll allow the bidders to enter in their bid worksheets. So unit prices and so forth will be automatically calculated. It'll also force some of the bidders to upload some of their required forms and then help our staff compare the bid prices quickly with the engineer's estimate so we can help move these projects forward. And so really, again, great collaboration with many partners throughout the council and excited to move this process improvement forward. So those are some of the notable projects I wanted to talk about that happened in the second quarter. And I'll just transition next to Elaine in OEO.
Thank you, Jody. Mr. Chair, council members, good afternoon. I'm Elaine Ogilvie. I'm the supervisor of the small business programs at the council in the Office of Equal Opportunity. I'm going to go through the MCUB utilization for Q2. Page 10 is where the report starts. Q2, we landed at 16% construction, which is 2% above what our goal is, and 2.6% for goods and services. And that is again below our 10% goal. But we are aware that we have some work to do there and have a lot of things going on in terms of closing that gap and things that we can think outside the box to increase that participation in those areas. I know Jody mentioned that the increase in MCUB direct spend, and I think she gave an increase of like 13%. I want to give you an idea of what that looks like. It was about $70,000. And so that was a great. When I saw those numbers, I was thrilled. So good job to Jody and her team. So putting that into perspective was very music to my ears, I guess you could say. There was some differences between Q1 and Q2. Like Jody mentioned, the overall spend at the council did go up. Our MCUB utilization did go down a little bit, even though we are definitely still above our goal in construction. But it is indicative of the fact that there are peaks and valleys with our spend, especially in construction this time of year. So overall, our decrease in MCUB is about 500,000, and like I mentioned, most of that is in construction, over $400,000 worth. So, in terms of breaking it down by spend by division, one thing that I want to mention is that we definitely have seen some success in this area. I want to point out that on page 12, you will see we did a little bit different thing with the graphic where we kind of showed where each division was and if there was an increase or a decrease. And you'll see that regional administration, there was a 133% increase. Their spend in Q1 was about $50,000. In Q2, it was 130. So I am very happy to report on that, and that's just showing the progress that we're making with the intentionality and the collaboration, the different departments and divisions. Slide 14 or page 14, I should say, of the report shows our utilization by gender and ethnicity. There is a typical pattern here of of where the utilization tends to fall in those categories, and that is not something that we're not aware of, but more so something that we are following very closely in our spend and working to identify those gaps and create some mechanisms that we can be very intentional with creating more opportunities in the areas that we do have the disparities. So our ongoing efforts in OEO, there's a few things that I want to share with you. We are, or we have, I should say, issued a survey out to a large number of small businesses as well as prime contractors. It includes questions about just not disparities, but barriers that our small businesses are finding in contracting with the council, looking for feedback from prime contractors on things maybe that we could think about or do differently. Excuse me. Out of the number of surveys that went out, we received responses back from 29 of the prime contractors or contractors that would serve as general contractor, and 356 of the small businesses responded. That's a significant successful return rate. So it was about 17% of the prime contractors and over 40% of the small businesses. So there is our staff member on our engagement and development unit team is working through this data, and we're going to use the responses to move forward further initiatives to improve our program. So out of those surveys, just to mention, there was a firm that responded back, a prime contractor that responded that they would like to engage in a mentor protege. They had already been working with a small business, but you know, in that similar capacity, but it just was in good faith. It wasn't an actual formal agreement of any kind, and so they reached out to the council, and I'm happy to announce that we have made it official that we have one more mentor protege on the books. So right now that makes 4. The current mentor protege program, or the agreements that we have right now, the firm that I've mentioned in the past that has been very successful in this program is over $1.2 million in not sales, but work with council work. We have another agency that is working with one of our environmental service prime contractors, and this was very intentional as we identified that environmental service industry, industrial painting was a gap that we really felt was a need that we needed to fill. So we worked intentionally to find an MCUB and a ES prime contractor that could work together to build that capacity, so we could see more MCUB participation in our industrial painting. So that is going well. They reported back that they have been through several classes hosted by their mentor, and that they're learning a lot, and they are on the verge of bidding on some council projects. So I'm sure I will have more detail on their success next quarter. I want to touch base on the meet and greets that we have been hosting, or executing, I should say. OEO has been working collaboratively with Jody's team. They've been doing a great job of coordinating the logistics to get everybody to the table and host these meetings. And in Q2, we saw an increase with some of these firms, upwards of $24,000. So most recently, I just received, and I probably could have waited till Q3, but it's an exciting story that we did have a meet and greet with a firm that reached out to us initially with some current, not concerns, but an inquiry of how to be more successful with working with council. And we hosted a meet and greet with this firm. We learned a lot about the products that they provide. And our regional administrative maintenance team has worked directly with this firm. The meet and greet was at the beginning of July, and we've already issued over $2,000 in POs with this firm. So, and my understanding is that there's more to come. And it simply, this was a result of intentionality, collaboration with Jody's team and the business unit, and really giving this firm an opportunity to explain to us what they do, what they can provide, and listening. So excited about that. This is just a little, the micro purchase report that is on the last page is a little bit more about what I mentioned with the increase in spend on that direct direct spend. And then I also want to mention that along with some of these other items that we are engaged in, we are definitely looking at ways to find more projects that we can actually set goals on. Our goods and services area is one area that we are really starting to put the microscope on and find opportunities within those that we can set a goal on. One of the things to get more information on these projects is what we created a project intake form to get more information upfront about these projects, learn more about them, and really dive into the details. So that's been working really well. We've gotten a lot of great feedback. Jody's team has helped us with implementing that and rolling that out and communicating with project managers on that. And yeah, overall, I feel Q2 was a success. And with that, if anybody has any questions, I'm certainly happy to answer.
Any questions from people? All right, so and I just and we have had this conversation offline, but it just it's as we look at sort of the macro numbers, right? So we spent $200 million in the quarter. 700,000 of the 200 million went to Black and brown owned businesses and minority owned businesses, right? So of the total without exclusions, right? So, and it's not dissimilar from what numbers we see at the state level or for others, but I think what's interesting with what we're doing, we're putting in tremendous effort to try to find ways of connecting with businesses, contracting with businesses, working with businesses. I'll just speak for myself anyways. I just, you would like to see this, or us be able to show more, headline progress for all of the work and effort that our team has put in and not only in the last 2.5 years, but for a long time before that. It's just frustrating to think about how much time we've spent on this and really feel like we as a region, we as a state have made very, very little progress in the 2.5 years that Governor Walz has been in office. And so that's just what the numbers tell us, unfortunately. It is not for a lack of effort. It is not for a lack of having really good people that are trying to figure out how to do everything that we can. But at the end of the day, we are, similar to what we see on housing and some of the other issues where we see significant disparities in our state. We're just struggling to find, something that causes a breakthrough that allows us to see sort of significant, meaningful change that's sustainable over a long period of time. So I would just, our team is open to any ideas that we have. If we, I don't think it's really even necessarily a lack of investment. We have tried to find ways of putting money into different ideas, but I would encourage this group as you're out, talking in other areas, see what other people are doing. We need to find a collaborative way as a region, as a state to hopefully make significant progress. It's been a year since the murder of George Floyd. Everybody was in a flurry last year about this time of trying to do things differently, and and again, a year later we are where we were then. So and it's, I'm sure for our team, it's probably tough to do all the work that they do every single day to try to make things happen and just not be able to not really see the sort of the benefits of all that phenomenal work and effort that everybody is doing. So anyway, so I just I think it's obviously the numbers are not where we'd like them to be, but I think we should be really clear that it is not for a lack of trying, and it's not for a lack of people not wanting to move the needle and do things. We're trying to tackle a very, very difficult systemic problem, and we need to continue to work at it and continue to think creatively around what else we can do with that. So, Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate those comments. And it's really, you know, been something that's just been really heavy on my heart, especially, you know, around housing. You brought that up too. So I'm just going to draw a parallel here, right? We all know that we weren't in a great place in Minnesota when it came to disparities and gaps, right? And kind of at the bottom of the heap. And then COVID hit and the disparities got worse, exponentially so, when it comes to those who were unemployed a year ago. 1 in every 5 African Americans, I believe, that's the stat that was put out, you know, was facing unemployment. And you'll see a lot of headlines too right now around housing and the disparities. And I would just say this, you know, people are, and I'm not saying that we're doing this, but I think that it begs us to just continue our earnest efforts and patience, because you're right, it is systemic racism, and it's going to take an awful long time, unfortunately, to unwind the detail that is this racism in every system back out again, right? And helping people, building a pipeline of another generation of people that are facing these disparities, where they can get into those corridors of opportunity, whether that be through education, whether that be through entrepreneurship, whether that be through the ability to increase their financial capacity and wealth. You know, that is a huge component, so that programs like this can then, I believe, be better accessed and taken advantage of. And I think that, you know, we need to see immediate results. There's no question about that. But turning this big ship at sea right now, we just have to be dedicated in the work we're doing. So I commend everything that we're doing and agree with you, Mr. Chair. If there are new things or new ways we should be doing it, absolutely. I mean, make mistakes, let's figure it out, learn from our mistakes, whatever. But we need more people to be at the point where they can be ready to go, and you know, that might not be in all of the work we do. There are other institutions we know throughout the state, public, private, nonprofit, that are helping people every single day. But you know, we're still in a traumatic phase of our American history right now, and with the political divides and everything. So it's frustrating. I also am concerned that because things are politicized, or, you know, with all the right intentions, we're looking for one-size-fits-all solutions to things too. And we should be absolutely angry about the place that we all find ourselves, because this is unacceptable. But we also have to go forward with really serious, determined measure and movement forward, because I get concerned that some will tire, you know, in a year or two if we don't see results, or legislation will be introduced that, with even with good intentions, could really be super counterproductive in the things that we care about at this council. So I'm sorry I'm on a soapbox a bit, but I believe in your comments, and I think we're doing the right thing, and just keep pushing, everybody. Just keep pushing, and don't lose faith and don't lose hope, and keep trying, because the last thing we want to do is become frustrated and then, you know, kind of let off those efforts. So I'm just saying, everybody's doing a great job. Keep going, and keep your eye out for everybody around us who needs to be part of the system to get people where they need to be to, again, better themselves, take advantage of, you know, opportunities. And we should be right there, you know, supporting, opening doors. And we should also be very strident in our unified voice against things that, whether they're good intentions or not, that could, you know, put us all on a bad path. So just appreciate this work. It's you know, hard, but you know, we're looking at data points that are a few years in the making here, and it's crisis time. So I just again encourage everyone to hang in there, keep going, and maybe a future council from us, a future generation from us again will look back at a day when they go, hey, that was a good thing that they started to do in the, you know, the seeds are planted now, but we'll reap the harvest later.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair?
Councilor Lillian?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. And I really want to add my voice of thanks to Ms. Jacoby, Ms. Ogilvy, your teams for the work that you're doing. And it is important work, and it is, you know, in some ways that feels like sort of threshold work, right? To Councilmember Johnson's point, you know, it's a few years in the making. We hope to see dials move in more short order, and hopefully we'll see it over time. And I really appreciate your comments, Councilmember Johnson, and yours, Mr. Chair, about the systemic issues we're trying to address, right? And these are evidence of deeply embedded systemic racism in all of our institutions here in our region and in our state, right? And so I kind of entered public life right at the dawning of this awareness of how great these disparities are here in my city, Minneapolis, in our state. And it was really surprising to us, you know, here in Minnesota, or at least to me, because we think of ourselves as so progressive, so open. And as we learn that we have some of the greatest disparities in the nation, it was really disheartening. And I remember earlier in my Minneapolis City Council career, I would say to people, we're worse than Memphis, you know, and it was just really, really kind of shocking. So I'm just thrilled at the effort that we're putting here. I mean, to Councilmember Johnson's points about being encouraging to continue, and that's what we need to do. The importance of our local leadership at this time, I think, is really, really critical. And we're not going to solve the deeply embedded systemic racism in our systems and institutions in this committee, but this work is vitally important to an entire holistic approach, and that we're going to have conversations in a different way than we've had them in the past. And this last year, I was privileged to be invited to participate in the City of Minneapolis' first Truth and Reconciliation work group. It kind of emerged from the City of Minneapolis declaring racism a public health crisis, and so trying to sort of start to put some some process in place to start having conversations in a different way. And it was painful and kind of brutal to participate in this group. It was all Black descendants of slaves and American Indian Indigenous people who served on the work group, those who suffered the most from stolen land and stolen labor. And it was really important work. We just delivered our recommendations to the city. Oh, I think right at the end of June, beginning of July, and the city accepted them and is starting to act on them. They'll put a Truth and Reconciliation commission in place based on the work. And I'm not suggesting at all that's what the Met Council does. I am suggesting that we pay attention to these efforts that are trying to have different conversations in a different way to really get to the root of some of the systemic issues that we're trying to address through the work in this committee. And I agree with Councilmember Johnson. We're kind of in an interesting era in our country where the difficult to talk about, difficult to face, really unpleasant parts of our history are being brought to the surface, because we're going to need to do that. And it's to make real authentic and systemic change. And so I'm really honored to be part of this here in this committee, and I really want to again thank the work of the staff. This is an uphill battle no matter how you slice it. And so we're taking our piece of it here in the committee with the work that we're doing. I look forward to seeing, you know, even more progress, better numbers as we go forward. But again, I'm just really thrilled and kind of honored to be here and doing this work with you all. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Lilligren. Any other final thoughts? All right, seeing None. Thank you, Jody and Elaine and Sai and Ashanti, if they're still on. Does somebody have a motion for me?
Mr. Chair, oh, you're looking for, okay, so we're moving past quarterly procurement. I'm like, that was an information item. Mr. Chair, yes. I move to close this meeting under section 13D.03 subdivision 1 of the Minnesota statute so we can consider a labor development and negotiation related to labor strategies.
Is there a second?
Second by Barber.
Seconded by Barber. So just as we open up discussion, the governing body of a public employer by majority vote at a public meeting may decide to hold a closed meeting under the provisions of section 13D.03 subdivision 1B of the Minnesota statutes. The discussion at the meeting closed under this law must be confined to labor negotiation strategies, developments, and/or discussion and review of labor proposals. The proceedings of a meeting closed under labor law will be tape recorded, preserved for 2 years, and made available to the public as provided by law. Can we have a roll call vote to close the meeting?
Barber,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the motion passes. Thank you. Before we close the meeting to discuss labor strategy, I'd like to inform members of the public who are monitoring the meeting for the record that the committee will adjourn immediately after the discussion of this informational item, and that the committee will not have any discussions or conduct any business after this informational item has been complete. For the record, the meeting will be closed to the public at 3:20 p.m. on August the 11th. Do we have the right people in the room?